You suck with the Lizardmen. Admit it. Go on, if you admit it now, I'll stop spitting on you after sex. And today I'm going to tell you why. Are your skinks more like twinks? Is your great plan more like a great sham? Well, don't worry. Toad Daddy Blake is here to look after you, and today I'll be giving you my take on why you suck with the Lizardmen, Kroq-Gar and the Last Defenders as a faction. My name is Blake and I bid you my fondest welcome to Blake's Takes, where today we'll be diving deep into why you're just awful with the Lizardmen. Is my take hot or not? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. After today's video, your Kroq-Gar campaigns will be you rock-Gar campaigns. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen. Number 1. You struggle with the Skaven. Skaven to the left of me, Skaven to the right. You start at war with Clan Mordkin. As starting enemies go, they're quite a bit more challenging. They control a heap of territory which you'll need to be efficient at dealing with to get rid of quickly before the southern Skaven of Clan Morbidius decide that they don't like you shouting Bok at them anymore and decide to dogpile you. So attach your skink priest to Kroq-Gar's army and get to work taking the starting settlement of Tiatika. Keep your forces out of range of the towers and send Kroq-Gar to batter down the gates. Take your cold ones over to the gates just north of you to batter them down. You won't be going through those gates, you're purely doing this as a distraction. The AI will see your Cold One Spear Riders battering down the gates and position units there to cover.
Great success.
This simply draws units away from where you actually intend to enter, which is Kroq-Gar's breach. Have your skink priest run up close to the wall towers to draw its attention as your forces march down once Kroq-Gar has finished battering the gate down with his golden pimp claw. Now, the first ones into the breach are your Saurus warriors with clubs. Notice they have this orange marker on their unit cards. These are blessed Saurus warriors with shields. These guys are fantastic. They have perfect vigor and do considerably more damage than their regular counterparts. I'll go into more detail on blessed units later on in this video, but these guys are perfect Skaven killing machines, never tiring in their service to the Great Plan. Then you want to toss the rest of your infantry in. Then you want to maneuver your Stegadon in and use it to cycle charge through the surrounding blob of units. This thing will rack up a lot of kills if you treat him like a big derpy chariot. Keep him on the move and keep him charging to get the most value out of him. Finally, send in your cold ones through the breach they made to charge down any slingers circumferencing the breach, and voila! Tiatika is yours. Now you have your first province, you'll want to do a couple of bits of admin before hitting that end turn button. Now your next job is to hire yourself a Saurus Scar veteran at Tiatika and attach him to Kroq-Gar's army next turn. Pompous is a fantastic trait to roll. It reduces enemy leadership in a region, so getting a few pompous heroes or lords in the future will dramatically decrease the amount of time it takes for you to break the enemy in further battles, especially against those cowardly Skaven. This is a bit of RNG though, but if you see a pompous hero or lord, then normally it's a good idea to pick them up. Speaking of lords, you want to pick up the Tablet of Spawning as your first research technology. This will increase your Lord recruitment rank by 4. As money is tight at the beginning of your campaign, I advise picking this technology up first before recruiting another Lord. So, recruit yourself a pair of Saurus warriors with clubs, not the Spearman variant. You don't need the anti-large at the beginning of your campaign. Do the same on turn 2, but move right up to the edge of the cursed jungle, so you're still in your territory so you can get another round of recruitment in. You're going to need to proceed north first to deal with your starting Skaven enemy. The cursed jungle fight should be a stomp for you, just keep your Stegadon ploughing through the ranks of chaffy Skaven units whilst your Saurus warriors chew through the rest. Now with the cursed jungle, you want to continue recruiting. I advise picking up skinks with javelins over their normal skink counterparts. They have the exact same melee capabilities, but the javelins will give you a nice chunk of extra damage, so I'd advise always taking javelin skinks over their regular skink counterparts. They cost a little bit more, but the extra damage is always worth it. Because skinks don't really do much damage in melee, it's good to get some value out of them on the battlefield with the ranged attack. Basically, never recruit the normal skinks, only recruit the javelin skinks if you have to choose between them. Now, on to the next turn, you have the choice of going after either the Serpent Coast or the Temple of Skulls. I advise going after the Temple of Skulls to neutralise the Skaven's recruiting abilities somewhat. This is a major settlement and has the exact same map as the previous. Follow the exact same strategy, except now you have more units, so it should be an easier win. Now, by turn 5, the Tablet of Spawning will have finished researching and you can pick up a shiny new level 5 Saurus Oldblood. Kroq-Gar reduces the upkeep of this type of Lord's armies by 15%, so in the cash-strapped early game, he's your pick. Hire him in Tier Tuquita and start recruiting more Saurus. Then for your next research, I basically just go for all the Saurus technology I can muster to buff these guys up to the nines. Now on turn 6, you'll notice I have a Skaven army outside the Cursed Jungle. We can force march our new Lord up there, use the Rite of Awakening to get yourself some more spawning sequence tokens, and pick yourself up some Blessed Saurus warriors with clubs and some Sacred Kroq-Gar. The Temple of Skulls is going to rebel, so I keep Kroq-Gar nearby to deal with that. I complete the Sotek's Chosen quest that gives me more spawning sequence, so I spend that on getting some more Kroq-Gar in my new army. The big Skaven chaff army doesn't want to fight my small elite army in the Cursed Jungle, so they've just sat there raiding over the end turn, which actually isn't ideal. You can go ahead and kill them off with your small army though. Auto-resolve yields a Pyrrhic victory with no casualties, so I take it. You could certainly do better by fighting it manually. Kroq-Gars and Saurus eat these Skaven units for breakfast. They really just hard counter them, so much so that I march my tattered army up north too and end up being ambushed by yet another full stack of Skaven before I've had any significant replenishment. I fight this battle manually and can still manage to get the win. This has effectively neutered Clan Mordkin, and Kroq-Gar can go and collect the Serpent Coast extremely easily. Now, what happens next will basically define your campaign. You see, you border a lot of legendary Lord factions, none of whom are very keen on your existence. Warhammer 3 does not let you enjoy periods of peace. You have maybe one turn, at the very maximum 2 turns, to get your forces back into position and declare war on Clan Morbidius to the south of you. If you do not declare war on Clan Morbidius, the AI will select a faction almost at random for you to fight. I have had Thorek Ironbrow declare war on me. I have had Khalida declare war on me to the north. I've had Manfred von Karstein declare war on me in this campaign, in different iterations. If you are not at war with Clan Morbidius, the AI will pick a faction for you to fight. So get your ass back to your starting province as quickly as you can. This unfortunately puts you at a big disadvantage in the war with the Southern Skaven. You'll likely be playing a bit of Skaven whack-a-mole around your capital, as they can use the underway stance and you can't. And because you've been finishing the Skaven off to the north, you'll probably be out of position. But this is certainly preferable to having, say, the Dwarfs declare war on you. Clan Morbidius will declare war on you too, it's just a matter of time. But you really don't want to be fighting wars on 2 fronts, especially in your fragile early game. Now, this scrambling war to prevent another faction from declaring war on you will involve an element of randomness. I can't tell you where the Skaven will be, but I can offer you some advice on how to get rid of them. Firstly, Kroq-Gar is a fantastic ambusher. He has an extra 25% success chance on ambushing, so positioning Kroq-Gar in ambush stance by your smaller army is a great way to pick up early kills on these armies. I highly recommend auto-resolving these ambushes because the Skaven forces are faster than yours and will be able to evacuate the battlefield. If you auto-resolve them, you'll get a nice clean wipe of their forces. Now, in your turn, you might get ambushed, but I implore you not to panic. The Lizardmen are one of the least ambushable factions in the game. When your Saurus are surrounded, they say now we can attack in any direction, as they swallow Skaven slaves down like Slim Jims. The Skaven of Clan Morbidius will learn to hate Saurus nearly as much as this guy. Skaven ambushes in the early game will mostly be comprised of clan rats and Skaven slaves. Even your skinks will be okay. You just need to make sure that any warp fire throwers they have are shot off as a priority, and if they have a ruins caster, they're killed as a priority to prevent the dreaded warp lightning spam. Then you also have the often forgotten about astromancy stance. Whilst it is a bit niche because it lowers campaign map movement range, it can be useful for increasing your chances of intercepting armies of Skaven which are using the underway stance. You know the ones, those pesky Skaven that are jumping from place to place just out of reach of your forces.
Wankers! Fucking embarrassing. Waste of our time. Fucking waste of our time!
Again, I can't tell you exactly where they're going to be, but the Lizardmen have lots of tools which are perfect for bashing early game Skaven. The key part of this section is to ensure you're at war with the southern Skaven as quickly as you can to prevent other legendary lords from taking a swing at you. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen? Number 2. You don't know how to build your early armies. The Lizardmen have very strong units in basically all of their respective fields. However, with this strength comes the weakness of cost. Your units are expensive, and the Lizardmen are not great at making money in the early game. You'll notice your coffers running dry very quickly into this campaign. By the time you've filled out Kroq-Gar's army, you'll probably be in the red, so you'll need to get used to being outnumbered in your opening turns. Notice that Kroq-Gar doesn't have a full stack yet, even at turn 20. This is because I've been funneling units into my second army to get them to a good fighting standard. In these opening turns, money will be tight. Now, as I alluded to earlier, skinks with javelins are a great tier 0 unit. You can recruit them anywhere to help pad your numbers. One skink cohort with javelins costs about half as much as an unshielded Saurus warrior. So in your opening turns, these units will be invaluable to help you maintain your aggressive ousting of the Skaven whilst continuing to swell the numbers in your armies. With skinks, think of them as similar in their melee combat capabilities to Empire swordsmen. They're not going to win battles for you, but they can do a nice chunk of damage with their javelins. They're also pretty quick on their feet, so they can flank around to attack ranged units when your front lines collide, after they've used their javelin payload. While skinks are fragile, remember they're not expendable. If they break and rout, they will inflict morale penalties on your other troops, so you have to protect them. I like to keep my skinks back from the front and have the Saurus take the brunt of enemy charges. The skinks can then throw their javelins, racking up a nice bit of damage and poisoning the enemy, helping the Saurus break them down faster. Then I use the skinks to either flank around to attack ranged units, or to dive in with the Saurus on the front line. Remember that skinks' low armor and mass mean they get ripped apart by charges, so you want them ideally only to engage when the enemy is already tied up on your Saurus front line. In the early game, you are very limited by what you can recruit. It's only at tier 3 when your roster really starts to open up, and tier 4 when you start getting your best units, but I'll go into more detail on those later. So let's talk about your tier 1 to 2 units. What can you actually recruit from your early game troops? You have your regular skink cohorts and skink cohorts with javelins. These don't require any building and can be recruited from anywhere. As I said earlier, the javelins are superior and certainly worth the extra cost. Only recruit the javelin version of these. Their stats are identical to one another, except they have the nasty little javelin attack. They also have a shield to block incoming ranged attacks. They are great units to pad out your early game armies. Then you have your dedicated skink skirmishers, which are available once you build the tier 1 skink barracks. These guys are bad units. They just don't translate well to campaign gameplay. They have a very low range, a very small amount of damage which isn't armor piercing, and they don't have a shield, so they get torn apart by other ranged units. I advise that you don't recruit these troops. Javelins cost the same, but they have more health, melee defense, a shield, more melee attack, and their javelins actually have slightly more range than the blowpipes. Now in the same tier you have red-crested skinks. These guys are your anti-armor option in the early game. Basically, you should only be getting these guys if you end up in a war with the dwarves. They have similar stats to your javelin cohort, but cost a fair bit more. You're paying for their armor piercing. Only get these guys if you're fighting the dwarfs early or other heavily armoured factions in the very early game. They lose the javelin and they don't have a shield, Like other skink infantry units, they'll get bent up like a pretzel by an enemy charge, so don't use them to hold the line. These guys are flankers, like your other skinks. Saurus warriors are your line holders, skinks are never your line holders. Then in the tier 2 skink barracks, you can get chameleon skinks, which do have their uses. They can stalk, which lets you get up to some funny business. They have an inbuilt 40% missile resistance, which means they don't get torn to shreds by other skirmishers. They are, however, very expensive. They cost very slightly less than an unshielded Saurus warrior, but I'd be extremely surprised if they ever contributed that sort of value in a battle, outside of legendary lords like Oxyotl. They just lack serious armor-piercing range damage, which is why I don't recommend them in Kroq-Gar's campaign. They're not bad units like skink skirmishers, but they're pretty micro-intensive, and the payoff for that micro is not worth it in my opinion. Then you also get the Chameleon Stalker, which came in with Oxyotl's DLC. They cost very slightly less than Chameleon Skinks, but substantially more than Skink Javelin cohorts. They occupy a similar role, except they can sneak around the battlefield with Stalk. Their javelins do much more damage, but their range and ammunition quantity is less. They also perform better in melee. Now, in skink-focused campaigns like Oxyotl's or 10-in-1's campaign, these chameleon skinks will be a mainstay, but for Kroq-Gar, they simply aren't. At your capital, you'll have immediate access to unshielded Saurus warriors. These guys will be the backbone of your armies in the early game. They're well armoured and both variants do good damage. The clubs are good for bashing infantry and the spears are good for taking down cavalry and monsters. Even on the hardest difficulties, with battle modifiers put up to the maximum, these guys perform very well. They're a staple of all early game Lizardmen armies. Now at the tier 2 Cold One nesting grounds, you have access to feral Cold Ones, or clever girls.
Clever girl.
These guys are bad. I strongly recommend you don't bother with them. They are quite slow for cavalry and they rampage. And believe me, they take damage quite quickly, so they will rampage very quickly and get slaughtered. At tier 3 you get Cold Ones and Cold One Spear Riders, which are better, but still very slow for a cavalry unit. If you want to use cavalry, I suggest getting the Horned Ones because they're significantly faster than all the Cold One variants. They're pretty good. The rest of the Cold Ones I wouldn't personally recommend. They're just a bit too slow and derpy. The Spear Riders give you some anti-large, but that's about it. They're too slow to be what I would consider an effective cavalry unit. Then you have your Pterodon Riders, which are quite niche. If you want some flyers in your army, then the Fire Leech Bowlers are probably the better pick. Their bombs are reasonable at picking off lightly armoured infantry, but again, you suffer from low range and practically no armour, so any faction you come across that can fire back will be able to shoot these guys out of the sky. You're surrounded by a lot of missile-heavy factions. I think these guys just aren't useful against the foes you'll be coming up against. I think you have cheaper, easier to use options. Then, from the Sacrificial Altars of Sotek, you get the Razordon hunting packs and Salamander hunting packs. The Razordons have long-ranged armor-piercing shots, the Salamanders have long-range anti-large shots. I'm not a big fan of either of these units. There was a time when they were very powerful, but I think they've been nerfed into the ground. They suffer a bit from their unit design, I feel. Multiple entity large units that enjoy the same sort of jank as cavalry. They often struggle to fire, and when they do fire, it's often very inaccurate. The Razordons especially I find to be extremely inaccurate, and they will often just point blank refuse to fire. If I had to choose between them, I'd take the Salamanders because their shots have a bit of explosive damage to them, so they can arc them and they'll be a bit more effective. But then they do cost more than your Saurus warriors, and they are considerably more tricky to use. Finally, at the tier 2 Taming Pen, you get access to the Feral Bastillodon. It's not a bad monster, but by waiting till tier 3, you can get Bastillodon variants that don't rampage and have supportive abilities. Even then, they're not really units I recommend recruiting. They're a bit slow and derpy. They're not bad, you've just got better options. Now, in the terms of the units I recruit in the early game, I keep it extremely simple. Saurus frontline, skinks with javelins in the backline. These armies are simple and cost-effective. As you'll be moving around a lot of different provinces, it'll be tricky for you to actually recruit anything outside of these. But this is where the blessed units come in. which I'm going to discuss with you after these commercial messages. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen. Number 3. You don't understand blessed units. Blessed units are an extremely strong Lizardman mechanic which will greatly assist you at all points of the game. You can immediately recruit upgraded versions of units into your army in exchange for spawning sequence, this currency here. You make an initial purchase with spawning sequence, then you pay upkeep on those units with gold like regular troops. This mechanic allows you to bring in some heavy hitters into your armies, which will radically increase your combat potential in your forces. At the beginning of the campaign, spawning sequence will be very limited, so you have to select which blessed units you want to pick up very carefully. Now, all of the blessed units are upgrades in some sense of the word. They're all improved versions of your regular units, often with having more health as one unifying characteristic, but some of the units have extremely strong bonuses which will really help your early game armies. I'm not going to go through every unit, just the standout performers. Blessed Saurus warriors with shields. We spoke about these guys briefly in Reason 1, but Kroq-Gar starts off with 2 of these bad boys, and they are absolute linebackers. Considerably more weapon strength than their standard counterparts, they also have perfect vigour. These guys are excellent. They're worth picking up at all stages of the game. Just a very solid infantry unit. Blessed Kroq-Gars. These guys have a massively boosted charge bonus and they cause terror, which is great against your early Skaven starting enemies. Getting terror out so early on in the game will really help you break down the Skaven quickly. You won't need these guys later in the game, but in the early game they're invaluable. Blessed Sacred Kroq-Gars are also a fine pick. They sport an extra 40 armour in comparison to their regular counterparts, and they also have a missile block chance of 55%, which is the equivalent of a silver shield. And they have 360-degree missile protection, so it doesn't matter where you're positioned, they'll always be able to stop shots. Great for getting on top of those hordes of Skaven slingers. The regular Sacred Kroq-Gars have bonus versus infantry, so they're a very good chaff lawnmower. The Sacred Kroq-Gar are armour-piercing generalists. They have neither a bonus versus infantry or large, they're just pretty good at getting stuck into anything you sick them on. Kroq-Gars also get a buff to their weapon strength if fighting near skinks, so if you put Kroq-Gars into an army, make sure you have some skinks nearby to them to activate this buff. Skinks also get a buff, but it's fear. As you have Kroq-Gars standing next to you, causing fear, this won't stack. It's mainly the Kroq-Gars getting boosted damage. But Blake, why wouldn't you get a big stompy Stegadon or a Carnosaur? Surely that would be a better unit than a unit of Saurus or Kroq-Gars. Well, the reason is opportunity cost. You see, spawning sequence is quite scarce in the early game. You can get a big chunk of it using the Rite of Awakening as shown in Reason 1, but outside of that and the random missions you receive, this resource is very scarce. So you decide to get one big stompy dinosaur instead of the 3.5 units of Saurus warriors. You have the explicit costs of spawning sequence, now having far less troops, but then you have also several implicit costs. You now can no longer pad your second army out with numbers, so that army won't be as effective. You don't have a Law of Life caster to support that big stompy dinosaur, unless you grab yourself an early life slan and spin up another army, but you're not really going to have the funds to do this. And in the early game, every bit of gold counts. Big stompy dinosaurs work best with multiple big stompy dinosaurs, and you won't have the sequence for that yet. Later on in the campaign, the lizards have an excellent economy, and you can go nuts with blessed stompy dinosaurs.
I gotta tell you, this is pretty terrific. Yeah.
But in the early game, you're not set up to support more dinosaurs, both financially and tactically, because you don't have healing magic yet, and you don't have the economy to support them. Now, to get more spawning sequence passively, you need to use the Alignment of War Province commandment, which again carries its own opportunity cost of not using the Income Generation Province commandment. Then there's the Geomantic Locus building, which will give you 10 sequence a turn at tier 3, and that goes up to 50 a turn at tier 5. You want to be building this in all of your major settlements, but as I said, it only becomes available at tier 3. So blessed units have two bottlenecks. Sequence, which we've just discussed. This will be your early game bottleneck, as significant passive sequence generation doesn't really start until you have multiple tier 3 and above settlements. And then your late game bottleneck, which will be the number of slots you have available. So these slots, they replenish over time. Now, if you followed my advice in Reason 1 and picked up the Tablet of Spawning as your first tech pickup, you'll see it also grants you increased sequence generation as well as extra slots. Apart from legendary lords like Tic-Tac-Toe having increased spawn capacity for flying units, there's no other way to boost this slot capacity other than this tech. This will be your late game bottleneck, which you can't really do too much about. In the later game, you've got great picks like Stegadons, which we'll go into more detail about shortly. The key takeaway from this section is to not spend all of your spawning sequence on one fancy unit in the early game. It's better to get multiple strong units as opposed to one very strong unit, so you can spread your power more effectively with the limited resources you have. Later in the campaign, when sequence is more abundant, be sure to spend it, as its only use is for blessed units. There's no point stockpiling it. Blessed units are great for emergency armies, so even the skinks will be useful in padding emergency armies out. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen. Number 4. You forget your heroes. The Lizardmen have the strongest cadre of heroes in the game. All of your heroes get to ride big stumpy dinosaurs whilst equipping all of their weapons and ancillaries, which can make them nigh on unkillable whilst dealing absurd damage. Kroq-Gar has a particular focus on Saurus Scar veterans, and these guys tear everything to shreds on their carnosaurs, which become extremely strong. These guys are why you never need to recruit feral carnosaurs. They do the same job, except much better, and they don't rampage. You can equip weapons on them to further boost their damage output, and you can't do that with a feral carnosaur. They share the same unique Kroq-Gar ability that every level they get an extra 1% weapon strength, which at level 50 really adds up. You want to be building a lot of Saurus barracks to maximise the capacity of these guys, even if you have multiple barracks in a province. A tier 4 barracks will increase the hero rank by 2. Combine this with the sequence of projected presence and a few of these barracks, and you can start pumping out Scar veterans pre-mounted on carnosaurs, ready to unleash carnosaurage. You have skink priests, who come with either the Law of Beasts or Heaven's magic. Both decent schools, but this hero gets access to Stegadon mounts, which are superb. They get a regular Stegadon with a ballista, turning them into a monstrous artillery piece. They also get the Ancient Stegadon and an Ancient Stegadon with the Engine of the Gods, which has a massive Area of Effect wind spell, which you can use a couple of times throughout a battle. Skink Chiefs, another excellent hero. You get more capacity for these by building a tier 3 skink barracks. They increase your casualty replenishment rate, which is great because Lizardmen casualty replenishment rate naturally is quite low, whilst also being able to mount up on Stegadons just like the Skink Priest. They don't get the Engine of the Gods like the Skink Priest, but Stegadons are still excellent, either ancient or regular. Finally, the Skink Oracle, another staple. I like to pick up one of these guys in every army. They can cast Law of Life magic, which is perfect for any force not being led by a Slann Lord. They increase your campaign movement range when attached to an army. They also come immediately equipped with a Troglodon mount, which is good and kind of bad in a way. It's good in the early game, but it'd be nice to put them on Stegadons later on. Anyway, still a fantastic hero, get them into your armies. They can fight in melee, but they're a bit more fragile than other stompy dinosaurs, so you just need to keep an eye on them. As Kroq-Gar, your Saurus Scar veterans are your priority. You want to be building a lot of those Saurus barracks to boost these heroes up. The other heroes you don't need quite as many of, but it's a good idea to bring one of each in each army. And the Scar veterans I tend to bring no more than about 3. 3 carnosaurs will crush any large units which the enemy can throw at you. Also, as I said in Reason 1, look out for the Pompous trait. Getting a few of these heroes with Pompous will reduce leadership of enemies in the region. Very helpful throughout a campaign. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen. Number 5. You don't understand your economy. The Lizardman economy is excellent in the late game, but very tricky in the early game. Your units are expensive, and in the early game you're reliant on your cities to generate you money. The base value of sacking settlements is not very high for the Lizardmen. Typically, I tend to occupy settlements that I conquer to maintain the infrastructure and the settlement level as best as I can. If the settlement comes with a building you don't need, you can demolish it to free up space and get yourself some money. But I wouldn't recommend sacking settlements until you have at least researched the sequence of annihilation, which gives you some minor modifiers. But even then, sacking settlements is rarely the path I choose to take with the lizards, as you lose 2 tiers worth of settlement level. Your economy revolves around your cities. The Skink favelas and later on the Kroq-Gar Labour District at Tier 3 is your primary money-making building. It's a pretty good building as economy buildings go, but 450 a turn at Tier 3 is not going to pay for your expensive stompy dinosaurs. Where the lizards make their money is in their multipliers. The Geomantic Locust building gives 12% at maximum level. The Ziggurat of the Old Ones, where you recruit your skink priests, yields another 12%. Lodestones in minor settlements give you a further 8% at their maximum Tier 3 level. And finally, the alignment of crafting with maximum geomantic web modifiers adds another 10% modifier. It's these multipliers which make your money. Now, on the geomantic web, this mechanic is really not very important. Its only real benefit is to increase the power of your commandments. It's not that impactful, but it's still useful to get. Don't lose too much sleep if you can't get it maxed out. You require a Tier 5 Geomantic Locust to even get the best commandments. And it's only a little bit better than the non-boosted ones. The Geomantic Pylon is a good building though, because of its income modifying properties and the spawning sequence it generates, which we discussed earlier in Reason 3. So you're really heavily incentivized to get your settlements up to these tiers to access all of these resource buildings. Well, how do we do this? We need growth. You need to invest in growth early and get your meat farms built. Be sure to also use the province commandment, the alignment of crafting, to further boost growth in a region. Your ports are the worst ports of all the Order factions. A Tier 5 port will yield you a very meagre 300 gold a turn at Tier 5, when most other Order factions see this level of income return at Tier 3. So port settlements aren't a priority for you. Resources such as gold are very useful to you, not only providing income but other bonuses as well. Trade is also important to prop up your early fragile economy. It's a good idea to become chums with the dwarfs, if, of course, they don't attack you. I like to use diplomacy to negotiate trading agreements with them. Perhaps offer to help them with any of the wars they're in with the Tomb Kings like Khalida to boost relationships and get a chunk of money out of them. The lizards are also good at earning post-battle loot, so this kind of ties into that as well. The Sacrificial Altar of Sotek building grants you up to 8% extra post-battle loot faction-wide, so it's a good idea to get a few of these built in your major settlements. Kroq-Gar's Hand of the Gods quest item also gives him a massive 20% post-battle loot modifier to his army, so it's definitely worth completing this quest battle as soon as you are able to. The most crucial factor though is your armies. As I said in Reason 1, your armies are expensive. You need to ensure you're not overspending. You may have overspent on Saurus warriors and now you need to downgrade to skinks until you're more financially settled. Remember that going into the red economically is only bad if you don't have any money in your treasury and your troops start deserting. You can play at a deficit as long as you're fighting battles and racking up that delicious post-battle loot.
Precious Venus. Thank you!
So remember, grow your cities as a priority. Get their income generation buildings and the income modifier buildings. Wage wars to collect post-battle loot. Ensure you're weaving cheaper skinks into your armies in the early game. Your late game economy is incredible, but your early game economy is rough, so don't overspend on your armies. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen? Number 6. You don't know what your priorities are. The early game is the most challenging part of the Lizardman campaign. The late game gets substantially easier. In this section, I'll be giving you a small overview of what your middle and late game priorities should be. Firstly, we're going to talk technology. You have some really game-changing technologies, but none more so than determining the Great Plan here. When you have this technology unlocked, it removes climate penalties for any settlements if you own the province capital and it's tier 4 or above. This means that those once desolate wastelands which were uninhabitable to you become thriving centres of commerce. It is such a crucial technology to research just for this reason alone, and why I recommend occupying settlements, preserving the growth in those settlements so then you'll reach this stage faster. This technology gives you carte blanche to invade any territory you fancy and still reap the rewards despite unsuitable climates. It's a very important tech for you as you're surrounded by areas with poor climates for your cold-blooded compatriots. This technology also gives you campaign movement range after a military victory, speeding up your forces and allowing you to conquer things faster and bring in more delicious post-battle loot. It really is an excellent technology which you'll want to be picking up ASAP. Typically, I'll focus it after I've completed the Saurus buffing part of my tech tree. A quick way to boost your technology is to use skink priests to steal technology on enemy cities. This racks up research points faster. Be advised that this counts as a hostile agent action, so only do this on factions you intend to be at war with. Now, your other priority is growth. Growth in your cities to get your settlements up to as high a tier as possible. Build your farms, use the growth and income edict, because once you hit tier 4, something miraculous happens. You get access to a unit which will redefine your late game strategy, and it's a unit I'm going to talk to you about right now. Reason you suck with the Lizardmen? Number 7. You don't spam Stegadons. At tier 4 in your settlements, you get access to Stegadons. These units are incredible. Firstly, they have an excellent siege weapon attack which is great at basically killing anything if you have enough of them. You see, just one ballista bolt firing is okay, but you get 10 or more firing, then that damage becomes pretty nutty. So these units force enemy armies to come to you, which, when they do, they are greeted with an extremely powerful wall of muscle and horn. These beasties are fantastic at tearing through infantry formations, and they can basically do respectable damage to anything if you have enough of them. Whilst being a large creature, they're not gargantuan like the dread Saurian, so they don't get deleted by missile units in the same way that they do. They also don't rampage, where a unit becomes temporarily uncontrollable, unlike the feral Carnosaur and the Troglodon which you access from the same building at the same tier. This just makes them a cut above the rest of anything you can recruit at that tier. They're just so incredibly versatile and good against anything. Now, to get the most out of a Stegi spam army, you're going to want a Slann Law of Life Lord leading it, so it can heal them. If you're lucky, you can get some second generation Slann Lords who have a massive 40% spell intensity buff, making their healing that much more powerful. Slann, I find, have a very niche role in the Lizardman roster. They're a big, slow-moving spellcaster. They don't get any access to mounts, so they don't get any faster. Their only saving grace is they have the Law of Life, which is one of the most, if not the most powerful law of magic in the game. The only Slann Lords you should be recruiting are Law of Life casters. Slann are not good spellcasters because of their extreme lack of mobility, so picking up basically any other Law of Magic on Slann is a waste. In the same way I argue that Kugath Plaguefather is a bad spellcaster, it's all due to mobility. A spellcaster needs to be mobile to be effective, and Slann are anything but mobile. But a Law of Life Slann fits perfectly for a Stegadon stack. They heal them, they can drop the Dwellers Below, which is a powerful damage dealing spell on big clumps of infantry, and they have the Slann Force Field, the capstone skill at the end of their red line, which projects a 20% ward save in a radius 150 meters around them. The Slann's slow movement speed doesn't matter because he's surrounded by slow-moving stompy dinosaurs, which he is there solely to support. For this to be effective, you need to basically blob your Stegadons around the Slann. If you're not spamming single entity monsters, I'd personally take a Saurus Old Blood because of all the buffs Kroq-Gar gives them. If you do have a lot of single entities in the army, a Law of Life Slann is the way to go. Stack your Stegadons around your Slann and have him protect them whilst they deal out all the damage. Now, I also add a few Saurus Scar veterans to these armies. 2 or 3 of them are handy if the enemy is sending a lot of large units your way. The Scar veterans can handle them with ease. Now, with your Skink heroes who ride Stegadons, your Priest and the Skink Chief, I like to put them on regular Stegadons so they can join your Stegadon firing line. They'll automatically upgrade to ancient Stegadons, which lose that ballista ranged attack, which is what makes the Stegadons so versatile. So I actually like to downgrade them back to the ballista variant. Now, blessed ancient Stegadons have a damage over time ranged attack. It's a similar sort of damage effect to poisoned wind mortars, which actually makes them fantastic at ripping through infantry and cavalry because they're always shooting. I like to get a couple of these in a Stegadon spam army for this purpose when the lines clash, and they'll chip away at everything around your blob and rack up a pretty absurd amount of damage. This army composition is practically unbeatable. If you get a few of these armies out with a well-leveled Slanlord, you've won the game. Nothing can stand against you. This is the most efficient tactic available. This is the very definition of meta. You unlock a lot of units at tier 4, things like Ripidactyls and Carnosaurs, but nothing will be as versatile and powerful as mass Stegadons with life magic support. If you don't like doom stacking, then you're playing the wrong faction, because you are heavily incentivized to spam your big stumpy dinosaurs as the Lizardmen. Sometimes I just take some token Saurus warriors so I can pretend that I'm not doom stacking, but those Saurus are relegated to the cuck chair of the battlefield, standing at the back watching, presumably dressed like Superman. So that's why you suck with the Lizardmen. Do you agree with my take? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. I want to give a massive shout out to my Patreon supporters and channel members. D, Joshua Krager, Paugus, Dinkle250, Hunter X2, Robert Diorio, Gonk, Little Horus, Draconio, Bongos McDongos, Jelly, Fantastic Degenerate, Santi Snake, Linz Only Linz, Big Flop, Whisk, Raiden91, Desert Coyote, Hatoris Kurz, Old Man Mike, and Daniel Gloyd. I've been Blake, delivering my take. Thank you all so much for watching.